SVT-4 Pro. The owner says major crackles, and they get better if you tap around the gain pot. Now, I have not had major crackles yet. I had one minor crackle when I first plugged the bass into it. There's a little bit more of a noise there than I would like that comes and goes. And manipulating the board and moving the pots doesn't seem to have any effect. The only thing I can really reproduce is if I do the ultra low switch. It just needs to be cleaned. But I have the gain all the way up. This is with a P bass with a Fralin, and it's barely peaking. So I suspect that possibly one of the preamp tubes is a little bit weak. I'll be checking that. And based on the problem description of major crackle that goes away if you tap on this, and some sounds that I occasionally get from the input jack, I'm banging on it, see if I can make anything happen. I suspect that there's probably a broken solder joint on there. I'm going to have to pull the front PCB that has all the pots, which will give me an excuse to tighten all hardware as well. So let me get started on that. Well, I won't know until all this alcohol evaporates whether I got it or not. There are a lot of bad solder joints on the bottom of this board, and dirty tube sockets. And I cleaned these ribbon connector pins. I cleaned all the pots, and I cleaned all the switches, and I cleaned the input jacks and made sure all the solder joints, especially on the gain pot and input jacks, are better. This was really floppy before. Now it's got a normal amount of resistance to be moved back and forth. Those solder joints looked okay, but I could just flop this back and forth. The pins were broken inside the solder joints. So on the outside it looked okay, but there was not metal to metal contact. And I don't know whether this was part of the cause, but these two bus wires, that's what St. Louis Music did a lot at this era. So that's both Ampeg and crate. This is a ground connection to chassis made through these bus wires. The screw and washer just contacts these. Well, these were black, oxidized. They were just corroded and covered in a dusty film, the same kind of film you can still see residue of in other places. It was just coating them. So I cleaned them off really thoroughly, and I made sure that the solder joints on the other side were good, and I re-tinned them with some fresh solder. And I will make sure that the hardware that mounts there is also clean. So this would have been an unreliable ground. All these connections, these ribbon connectors, were dirty. The tube sockets were dirty. And I suspect this or probably both this were the issue. And I'll find out after all that alcohol evaporates and I can put it back together. Okay, everything reinstalled. I've got the nuts on the master volume and gain pot. The knobs are on, but they aren't on tightly. I wish the Ampeg had either used pots that matched the knobs or knobs that matched the pot shafts, but these had some Teflon plumber's tape on. A lot of knobs like this. PV does it too, where there'll either be some Teflon tape or just old masking tape to make up the gap. So that'll be a fun thing to have to redo. The others don't have their nuts in place, and so there's a little bit of wiggle. And I think that's probably why this broke. I think this nut came loose, and there was that wiggle all the time. So these will have the nuts put in place before it goes back out, of course. And these are tiny little things. And let's see, that's a 3/8 size. So do it like that to get it finger tight. And then little bit with the wrench to get the tension there. You don't want to do it too much because the bushings will strip, but you definitely want those things to be tight. And right now I've got all these things at noon, and I've got the gain and master volume at noon, and I'm a little bit suspicious about the strength or weaknesses of the 12X7s in there. They're apparently the stock ones, and they're just soft X. So I'm going to take this one out, the one that's in V1. I'll put in this Mullard reissue and see if there's a difference. All right, I edited out the time it took for that tube to warm up. And with this Mullard in, I'm hearing a little bit more. Just a little more gain, a little more clarity. This is a P bass, tone all the way up. All the tone stack here is at noon, and the EQ is bypassed. And I'm rusty because I haven't played bass in a few weeks, and my nails are a little bit clickety. But I think that was promising, so I'm gonna swap out V2 and V3 one at a time as well, just to see if there are further improvements. Seems to be about the same with V2 changed out. Let's see about V3. About the same, so just V1 was a little bit weak. So let me put the stock V2 and V3 back. No, I think I did lose a little something there. Oh, I put the wrong tube in V3. I put the weak one that was in V1 before in V3. So let me put the other one in V3, the other stock. This is the problem child. Yeah, definitely made a difference. I'm not inventing it. That's, you know, you can, especially when you can't directly compare sounds, there's some time between them. Even if it's just powering the thing off, swapping the tube, putting the tube in, powering it back on. We all have relatively unreliable aural memories. A-U-R-A-L. Thank you very much. Aural memories. And I have an unreliable aural memory to some extent, even though I train certain aspects of it. It's like when I was in college taking music classes, and I was doing ear training classes at 7 a.m. 3 days a week. My God, I could hear things so well. I was in a band, and someone would bring in an idea, and I wouldn't have to ask them what the chords were. I'm like, okay, yeah, okay. And then you get to the point where you just, oh yeah, you just hear the 1, 2, 4, 5. Oh, okay, this time they're doing a tritone sub there. Okay, hope 2, 5 subs. So you get in that world, and your ear's trained, and you can hear a piece and say, okay, that's definitely in G, and then they modulated to D, and then the real world intrudes, and that part of your brain gets lazy from not being exercised. And I still have pretty good ear recognition of things that I'm hearing, but not nearly to the level I was when 3 days a week at 7 in the morning I was focused on that, and that was something that I would continue to do with piano and guitar. But yeah, my point being that you can train for aural memory, and when it comes to amplifier stuff, I have certainly trained myself as much as I think is feasible to hear subtle differences, but when there's a time delay, you can trick yourself into hearing something that's not there. But because I put that red tube that was suspect in V1 into V3, and there was a blanket on the sound, I'm sure that that tube is bad. Ooh, what a nasty sound with those two buttons in. Just, it's kind of thing that sounds pretty when you're playing by yourself. It would disappear on stage. Let me turn the gain up a little bit and jiggle on things. I've done a lot of this off camera. I want to make sure that I got the problem. Pretty sure I did. I don't have a bass cab here right now, so I don't have the ability to do the full output wattage. But if there was a problem here that tapping on the board around the gain pot may go away, as the original complaint was, I'm very confident that I got that, and everything's cleaner. And let's see how the tone stack's working. Can't turn this pot until it's got its nut on it. I could break that off, so I won't mess with that. Let's see what these switches do. And if I turn the preamp gain up now that we don't have an anemic tube in, and let's go to a pick for that P bass into an SVT with a pick kind of thing. I think that all sounds very healthy. So I think the owner's going to be happy. And I've just got to go through here with some tape and get the knobs to stay on, because that's fun at this price point. Tape to hold knobs on.